Yay.
All right, welcome to the dungeon where we geek out on all things horror, thriller, mystery, and suspense. And we have a privilege of a new guest here in the dungeon. We have Jendia Gammon. Did I pronounce that right?
You did perfectly.
Okay. I usually I usually ask before we start recording, and we start recording proper. So because I don't want to like sound like a moron, and that's but yeah, I figure, well, I can't think of any other way to pronounce it. So, all right. So, how you
Hi.
doing?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
So you're a new member here at the dungeon, and
Mhm.
now we're going to be talking about. Now you have quite a few pens in the inkwell, so to speak.
I
Uh,
do. And more coming. Yeah. So,
yeah, so let me just so we get everybody set up and introduced to you. I'm gonna just read from your blurb here that you're a Nebula and BSFA Awards finalist, author of fantasy, science fiction, and horror novels and short stories. You're also the CEO of Roaring Springs Productions LLC and editor in chief of its publishing imprint, Stars and Sabers Publishing. You were born in Southern Appalachia and you live in LA with the fam.
yeah,
All right. So now we're going to be talking about it. Now you have another pen name. You go under write books under J. Diane Dotson.
I did previously. So that's an
Previously,
old one. Yeah. So
okay,
I won't
that's
be the only book that's related to that name that you'll see will be the sequel to The Inn at the Amethyst Lantern. So, and that's it, because everything going forward is Jindia Gammon, and which is
okay.
actually a much older pen name that I came back to. So
Okay,
coming home
all
after,
right.
yeah.
Because I was wondering, it's like, do you want use one pen name for your science fiction and fantasy, and the other one for horror, or that
No,
type of thing?
I started self-publishing, so I had a space opera series, the Questrazon Saga, Heliopause, Ephemeris, Accretion, and Luminiferous. And those were under the Dotson name. And then when I got the Shadow Galaxy, which is a collection which has some horror stories in it, through Journalstone published, that was still Dotson, but I was about to flip over to using Gammon, and it was kind of too late to switch. So I just said, okay, everything going forward, will be under Gammon. And so it's kind of just shifting over in traditional publishing, and also to honor my family because my maiden name is Gammon, and I wanted my parents both passed away in the last few years. And I thought it was a good way to kind of just like come back full circle, honor my family, where I'm from, and use this pen name that I had meant to use ages before. So
Okay, all right. Now the book we're going to be talking about today is Doomflower. It is going to hit the streets on, I believe, April 8th.
that's
Is
right.
it? Yes,
Yep.
through Encyclopocalypse. It is right now at the time of this recording, because we're recording this in February. It is available for pre-order, I believe,
That's right.
through Encyclopocalypse. And all right, now with Doomflower, it is first off, it's a pretty hefty book. I mean, you mentioned you haven't gotten the print, the hard copy yet, but it's like just shy of like 300 pages, at least on the arc that I read.
Yeah.
But it's a good dense book. I would just for my own uh, feelings about it. It's like if this was made into a movie, uh, I would say it would be you you wouldn't see the monster until the last 15 minutes of the movie.
Except
But
for hints, pictures like
yeah,
shaky cam
but you'd
video.
see you'd
Yeah.
see like glimpses of it in the dark, or
Yeah.
you'd hear it somewhere. But you'd get these little tidbits, these little morsels of the uh, uh, clues of what things going on, but nothing's gonna you're not gonna find out what's going on until the end. Now the book has been considered compared to, it's been like called Heather's meets, what is it? Day of the Triffids. Day of the Triffids is like the first vibe that I got from the book, by
Yeah.
reading it. I don't I don't want to say it's see it's a slow pace. See, if I say so slow pace, people are gonna think it's a slow burn, and they're gonna think it's boring. But no, it's there's a lot of things. You don't throw everything at the reader at the very, you know, you're gonna find out what's going on by the end, but you're gonna be going through quite a few, like I said before, little clues, little tidbits of info that, but it's you're not gonna spill the beans until the very end. But everything that you're reading is relevant to the storyline.
Right.
So, so basically, we got your our main character is it uh, Camellia
Yep. Camellia Dume.
Camellia Dume. Uh, she's not the easiest person to be friends with.
No, she is a mean teen queen. Literally the first chapter is mean teen queen.
So
Very much a Heather or Mean Girls situation with her. She is nasty. She's a nasty business. In a lot of ways, I kind of think of her as the Grinch. You
mm,
know, she's very much a Grinch kind of person and very, very, very rich, very privileged, and
oh yeah,
completely impervious to, or at least you think, impervious to really any empathy or feeling at all, and you kind of just, the journey is coming around to understanding who she is and why she is the way she is, and maybe even wanting her to succeed or not. I don't know, and that's what's going to be kind of fun for me is seeing how readers respond to this mean girl, that has just seemed so soulless. But, you peel back the layers, and there's more to her than meets the eye. But and there's a lot of symbolism. There's a masquerade, there's all these different
yeah,
things where you're kind of saying, okay, she's some kind of way. Why is she the way she is? Is she shallow? Is she clueless? That's not the case. So you're kind of getting to know Camellia while the world is starting to slide off the rails. And then that sort of convergence, happening later in the book.
yeah. I thought it was an interesting pick too. Is that because in a sense, Camellia is our final girl, and the usual trope of a final girl is she starts out really kind of meek
Yeah,
and just kind of uh, doesn't want to rock the boat at that, and then as the story arc goes on, she gets stronger and comes rises up
right.
to go.
Sarah Connor kind of thing. Yeah, like
Yeah, and
Ripley.
this one starts out, she starts out very strong,
Yeah,
but she still has a character arc because at least my first impression of her, I mean, she's really kind of a bitch, very
she's a
selfish
bitch.
bitch,
She's a bitch.
very selfish, very self-absorbed,
Yeah,
doesn't care about anybody, doesn't care
right.
about anybody's feelings, let alone their lives.
At all.
So that was interesting. Uh, Gate to come out of is, okay, your final girl is okay. She's starting that strong. Now, is she going to uh, use this strength or this internal, this fight or flight type of thing? She's a fighter,
Yeah,
but who is she going to fight for? What is she going to fight for?
right.
And now she comes across a I guess it's like the first day of school because she's a teenager, right?
Right.
So her one of the people she runs into is a girl named Ray.
Well, it's a character named Ray, non-binary. So
Okay.
Yeah. Ray is non-binary, and that's
Okay.
WRAY. So new kid in school.
All right. I didn't think I picked that up. Okay.
And fish out of water in
Yes.
every way.
So, like the Robin to Camelia's Batman, I would think. It is.
More or less, except that, they can't stand each other. So
Right.
it's, you know, complete opposites. But yeah, Robin's a good analogy in terms of where Ray's coming from, which is essentially nothing versus the rich character, like Bruce Wayne, Batman.
Hmm.
So, and it's kind of a funny, that is kind of a fun dynamic to think about. And how do those two, how could they ever team up, in any way? Like, because when you get that intro, it's a rough intro,
Hmm.
it's a rough landing for poor Ray. So, and that comes from my own experience, actually, because I switched high schools in the middle. I went from a country school
Hmm.
to a city school that had a bunch of rich kids, and that was like crash landing on another planet.
Wow.
It
Yeah.
was not fun. And because all the clicks and all everything is already crystallized, by the time you're
They already
entering your second
established.
year, and you're
God.
you're an alien, on another planet. So that was, it was like coming from that perspective, writing Ray versus writing the established, you know, as I put it in ecological terms in the book, the apex predator, which is
Hmm.
Camellia, and you enter in this new environment. So it's a rough, bumpy ride, and it's a character journey for both of them to kind of try to figure out Ray where they fit in and Camellia where how can she relent and open up, and let loose, let her hair down, more or less, because she is kind of uptight. Um, she's a boss, right? She's kind of a final boss, but there's just that hard exterior, and that's again, like I was talking about the Grinch earlier. It's like there's no getting through to this person. Like there has to be some kind of something happen to kind of break away from that exterior. So then that's the journey as things fall apart in the rest of the country and the rest of the world. It's just like somebody coming out of their seed, if you want to use the flower analogy,
Right.
someone blooming, and in a plant horror situation. So
And you definitely see a lot of depth to Camellia. There's because and I should have wrote the person's name down. I forget, but she meets a bit of a romantic interest. So you see some of that hard edge of her starting to soften up a bit
yeah,
as she's
Sid,
Sid. That's it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So it's yeah, it's cool when you see stuff like that, uh and again I gotta watch race. Get into spoilers.
yeah. No, yeah, it's hard because
It's
that's why it's hard to pick a passage because I'm like, because I don't want to spoil it because this is a journey and
yes.
there's a reason for all of it, and how it came to be. So
Yep.
she's very
And
much at the center of it. She's very much at the center of all of it. So when you were saying final girl, not only is she the final girl, she's also kind of like an inception point, right?
mhm.
In a lot of ways, she's a patient zero situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, and I try not to spoil that, but like it's all kind of happening. She's got this sort of nexus around her. Like she's got the one that she's invented for herself, not realizing that her importance in how all this is playing out. So
Yeah, and what all of these things that she's gone through, how deeply those things play a part in what's going, like for example her dad.
right,
What was the situation behind, because it's just her and her dad,
Right.
And there's also the aspect of the death of her mom. How much does that play into what's going on, or does it even play into what's going on?
Right. And you can tell they're both so completely broken um,
Mhm.
by the loss of her mother. And they just don't seem to have a way out of that. They're so dark down the well of grief that they can't even imagine there being light above. And they're both disasters. Like he, Desmond, is basically kind of a Saul Goodman kind of a guy. He's a complete con man.
Yeah,
He's fabricated everything to get to where he is with his wealth. But was he always that way? Like there's also kind of a journey for him that you kind of learn about over time. So, but they're both just they're in so much pain that they've built like barnacles on themselves, and that so that nobody can get inside. And they both are just like loggerheads because they're the same. They're that
yeah,
inciting incident of that loss, that grief. It's just so impenetrable for these two, and it's a tragedy, right? Because you can tell that Camelia's on her own a lot,
yeah.
and she doesn't have any. It's like sometimes he's just gone, for a long time, and she's essentially in her house. The house cleaning staff gets the heck out of her way as soon as they can,
It's like
and
they keep a wide berth.
they keep a
Both of
wide
them.
berth. Like the only person that ever treats her like a human is the gardener. Um, and and ironically, an appliance is like the
Yeah,
closest
I
thing.
want to touch on that too, because it's like I don't want to give the impression that this book is all doom and gloom and
Right.
depressing and stuff like
It's
that.
actually campy. It's
Her
very campy.
Camelia's best friend, I think, is the refrigerator.
It's the refrigerator. Fridge. Fridge
It's,
is has got an AI to it, and that's like her surrogate mom in a lot of ways, or at least her BFF. Because
uh-huh.
no human wants to establish a close bond with this girl. She'll eviscerate you instantly, So the fridge, though, is a fridge. And so she has this kind of fun relationship with the fridge as AI. And, that kind of plays a role long term. There's more to it than just this funny AI, which sometimes turns into a red panda face or
Yeah,
a
the
sad
little
face, or
emojis that they use. It's
has
like,
all the
it's
little
like,
feelings.
I love that part. It's
Yeah,
like,
orders her smoothies when she's feeling down. So they have a kind of fun relationship. Um, but she's still, like she's surrounded by beautiful gardens and has her robotic AI, but where's the human element that can make her more human, so
right.
into Ray. So, and then, you see as Ray enters the school, you're sort of introduced to this completely uh it's Malibu. They're wealthy, it's like the dynamics among the kids are very much sort of 80s 90s movie vibes. Like
Uh-huh.
you've got, I was thinking in terms of like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, when like the secretary is like the dweebs, the weirdos, the whatever, like Camellia goes down the line and just reads it all out how she sees it, which is profane and rude, and that's who she is, but she just calls it like she sees it. So, but it's all definitely a high school drama situation with comedy thrown in, dark comedy a
Yeah,
lot of the time,
yeah,
and
and they're driving
super
down the
campy.
road, listening to Adam Ant.
Adam
Yeah,
Ant, yes, and there's like 80s tunes kind of flickering in and out. So, and I think that like the fun element is too that she's very much an influencer, like social media. Like she's friends with this Hollywood starlet who is an influencer, is a
yeah,
total vapid, stereotypical influencer Hollywood gal that she knows. And so still not a really good friend though. Like it's all these people are sort of in her, they're like non-player characters to her,
right.
but it's part of her ecosystem, and that's all she knows. She doesn't know how to have a real close friend. And
Right.
so, but when stuff kind of starts to fall apart, she starts to kind of figure out where she is in the world, like as a person, and how she can deal with it. And as you said, she's pretty tough out of the gate. but she is vulnerable though, and she doesn't realize how vulnerable she is because she's in a situation that's actually pretty dangerous,
Mhm.
as a teen who is potentially being manipulated by someone, and she doesn't get it. Like she's still innocent enough to not understand that something's not right, and so that's its own horror story.
Yeah, she's
That's
not
its
as, street smart as she lets on, I think.
exactly. Exactly. So that's kind of scary in a different way. Like there's a little bit of psychological horror element going on while the plant, mutation stuff is happening. She's having to deal with a very personal situation, which is disturbing, that could go into either way. So like there's that. There's all these little layers that are happening that are building toward, this final situation. And so that's I having Camellia be more complex that way, like if she were just a mean girl and nothing ever happened with her character arc, nobody would be invested.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, learn more about her, you understand where she's coming from and how broken she and her dad are. And then, how do you come back from that? How do you open up when you're covered with thorns? So
right. Wow,
hard to
that's
bloom when you're encased in a bunch of thorns.
yeah.
So, but then there's the plant monsters. So, yeah, back to
Just when
David.
things weren't hard enough. There was
Yeah. So, and it's kind of surreal to have this come out right after the situation here in LA, with the fires,
Oh,
and I was
wow,
like,
yeah,
I had this moment because, it's set in Malibu and it's in the future. It's near future. You can tell it's pretty soon. But the situation unfolding weather-wise is completely different from a fire. There's something else going on. So
yeah,
it's a different form of LA disaster, which we've all seen a lot of LA disaster movies, and this is just like the latest one. It doesn't start in LA, it actually starts in Tennessee, which is where I'm from. So
okay,
there's like all these little hints of things, like what's going on. It spreads westward. So
yeah. Yeah, it seems like that escalate pretty once the ball starts rolling, uh, it it it, uh, it picks up speed pretty quick.
yeah, I
So,
like to build like once it's all everything's set on the table, I like to yank the table.
right?
That's kind of how I roll. And another book that's coming out that's a horror that's more like kind of like an X-Files situation. Atacama is my next horror book, which is out in May. So I had like the 1-2 punch of horror debuts,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's another situation where you're building towards something and then completely upended, and so there's some interesting parallels. And it would be fun to talk about Atacama as well because it's a totally different kind of a book. But
Okay.
there are some through lines, of grief being one of them, and then dealing with an end of the world situation. So
Mm.
I must have deep thoughts on this because it keeps coming up. So
Well, that's and I would think it would be rather therapeutic to get all that stuff out because I know it's like I do a
it
lot of
is.
journaling and stuff like that. When I start feeling a certain way, it's like I just got to write it. I figure if I either write it out in a journal or even write like a song about it, stuff like that. It's a process for me to get it out
Yes.
through my hands, out away from me,
Yes, exactly.
that go out there somewhere.
Yeah, and it's with both of them. Like with Atacama, I actually had nightmares writing that one because it was getting really close to the bone on
Mm.
some issues because my mother had just died. And the main character out of the gate, her best friend is she gets the news she's dead. And so like this is all kind of unfolding. I can't even write it, right? But then
Mm.
the scary stuff that I had to write, and I don't really get scared, by horror movies. I just enjoy them. Like The Thing is my favorite. My favorite.
Okay.
Um Now there's definitely some layers of The Thing in Atacama. Even though we're not talking about it, I just like kind of tying a line here that I started having nightmares, and I think I was just trying to process my own grief. And then one of the characters going through grief, and then all of these crazy things start to happen, and you feel so disoriented, and then, you can't quite anchor yourself. So, and that's a very fragile state to be in, and you're easily manipulated when you're in that state quite often.
Mm,
So, and again, like this, a novella that's coming out next year that's horror called Godfestation, and it's the closest one to what's happened to me with my parents' deaths, and the main characters like my age, and it's a journey to see like what happens when you grieve so much that it changes the entire universe. So
mm. Do you find when you write stuff like that that's very so deeply personal that when it starts to get, I guess, too much, and those quote unquote triggers start really firing, do you find that it's like, okay, I got to stop, walk
yeah,
away for a bit? Or I find other sometimes other artists or stuff like that, it's like when they start to feel that way, it's like, okay, we're in the groove, we're in the zone,
right.
so to speak. So even more horror and stuff can come out onto the page. So they feel like maybe going away, giving it a rest might interrupt
Yeah.
that flow, so to speak. So I was wondering
Well,
how you approach it.
it's very interesting because so much has happened to me in the past 5 years that when I started writing Doomflower in 2019, then I had just a series of calamities, just boom, 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 boom. Um, there was a family dynamic situation that just fell apart in 2019, and then the pandemic hits. My father dies suddenly. I have to move my family to Tennessee from Southern California for a year
Mm,
to help out. That was a disaster. We moved back, and then mom's got cancer. And it's
mm,
just like endless scenarios of being like, oh my God, like, and because when 2020 hit, I had a couple of end of the world kind of books, and nobody wanted them. They were like, no, we're good. We're good. We got a pandemic. We're good. And so I was like, ah, shoot. So I kind of mothballed stuff. Came back to Doomflower, in 2022, and was working with it and getting it. But then when mom was dying, and I was writing these books, it was again, there were a lot of triggering moments. And there were times, especially with Atacama, where when I started having nightmares, so I was like,
mm,
I got to take a break. I got to go see my mom's grave, So I drove to Tennessee again. And then as soon as I did, it opened up. I kind of could just like, okay, I can start again. I can move forward again. I've what I needed to do, I have done. So then I could finish the book. Now with Godfestation, it's been interesting because it was due in January. So what happens in January? I have to get my family out of this house and flee, for a couple
mm.
of days. There's a fire right there. I
Wow.
mean, literally, in my zip code. So, and
Mm,
I'm trying to do all this other stuff at the same time. And I said, you know what? I can't even think right now. Like, we're just not really thinking right. Like, we turned out to be fine, but Altadena didn't. It's
mm.
gone, and like people we know, my kids' friends, lost everything.
Wow.
It just, and you could smell it. It was just horrible. So like I could not finish it. And I talked to the publisher, said, I'm sorry, but I can't do this right now. Like, you know, it's dealing with grief, it's dealing with a catastrophic situation. It's gonna have to wait a few weeks. So things have calmed down. I'm back to writing it. So it's interesting, like I can now though write that novella with this perspective of being like, what do you do when you're faced with a situation in which you have not very long to make pretty major decisions?
Mm,
What do you take with you? And because I was, things were getting dicey, and I went to my teens and I said, listen, I don't like what I'm seeing and hearing. I don't like what I'm smelling. I want you to pick one or two things that you would be super sad if you never saw again, and we got to get out of here. So
mm,
then, like, you got to go, right? So we had our go bags. We left. And it was crazy, and yet we still were so lucky that we weren't closer to the fire than we already were. Like one of my kids was out of school for weeks. There were burn scars at the school. Some of the
Wow.
trees were burned. It was crazy. So, and then you come out of this and you think, I'm going to look at this book and whatever else I'm writing from a very different perspective now. These different points in my life of like pandemic, dad dying, mom dying, disaster,
Hmm.
and also Helene wrecked a lot of my home area in Appalachia in
Yeah.
autumn. So it's like these kind of events in your life realign you to what's important. And so coming to the writing, I've had a mixture that's not been consistent. I think because I've been kind of derailed a few times. Um, but what I have done is to always come back to it. So I kind of feel that I've worked through things and I can move forward with my writing and then I'm good. I think that anytime you have a crisis, it's okay to take a break. I think that's important to
Mm.
give yourself grace. But if it helps you more to just keep going, there's no wrong answer. It's whatever works for you. So I'm moving forward again and it's all good and it feels good because I feel more appreciative.
Okay, great. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that's always important to just not give up, and it certainly helped that it's a contractual, it's a contract thing. So I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I kind of don't have any choice." So
Yeah. Like, it's one thing to be like, well,
there's
I
just some
expect
incentive.
yeah, there's a little bit of incentive and I do want to see it in print. And that's pretty good incentive. Like, this is meaningful and I know my remaining family will appreciate it too. And they'll when they read it, it might be too much. I don't know, but it also hopefully will help them remember happy memories too. So,
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, do you happen to have? I usually like to have the author read like a little passage from their book, just so they get a sense of the writing style, and maybe if you had like a favorite scene, or maybe a cliffhanger, or however you want to, whatever you want to give us.
all right, let's see. There's a scene in which chaos has definitely started to unfold. Camellia thinks she's got it figured out. She's not quite right.
Okay.
So, house party at Camelia's, except things don't go well. So, they're at the party and there's the jocks that are not cool, that are kind of mean. He's like, I know that smarmy cheap sounding laugh anywhere, growled Camellia. It's Landon and some of the ball sacks. Hey, you flaming assholes, she shrieked down the lane, come clean this shit up or I'll— A loud yell broke out in a slithering sound and then a crack and a scream. Mr. Levin and Mr. Welsh ran out into the street. What are you doing? Screamed Camellia. Get back here! Help! Someone yelled. It was chaos and it was gruesome. The jocks and some hangers on had indeed gone down the street to roll yards, just far out of range enough from Camellia, and the plants noticed. She watched in horror and pushed Ray gently. Go get my swords, she urged. I'm coming, she yelled. Camellia, you can't, screamed Mr. Levin. If you leave, your plants will attack all of us. Chapter 31, Life on Earth. Camellia pressed her hands to her temples. Ray bounded out with a sheathed sword. Dwayne goggled. Mr. Levin and Mr. Walsh yelled in the street for Landon and his fellow jocks to run for it, but at least two of the teens had been seized by the vines. One of them dangled in the air by his foot, screaming. Another one made terrible gurgling sounds. She could see whipping movements high into the air, and she recoiled. Jesus, she murmured. Then, staccato. Gunfire! She screamed. Who's shooting, for fuck's sake? An SUV barreled around the corner and onto her street. She saw flashes of light and the resulting explosive bursts of machine gun fire. Get inside! Mr. Levin screamed. Shrieks erupted as everyone bolted back except for Mr. Levin, Mr. Welsh, Camellia, and Ray. Mr. Welsh, just hanging from the corner of his mouth, held out a transmitter and shouted to one of the AV kids, Turn it up! And began to advance down the street. You idiot! Camellia shrieked, Get back here! Guard the house with the thing! I'll go! Before Ray could stop her, she seized the sword and ran down the lane. Camellia! Shouted Ray. I'll stop there.
Excellent. So, Yeah. So who survives?
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's over the top. It's, under the radar, and I hope people get a kick out of it. Writing an anti-hero was so much fun.
Oh yeah, I bet. I bet. Uh, well, thank you so much, Jandia, for coming into the dungeon.
Thanks
Hope
for having
we didn't scare you too much. So, if people want to find out more about you or your other books and series, where could they go?
Go to jendiagammon.com. That's JendiaGammon.com. And there will be a menu. You can find my books, you can read about my work, and see the events coming up. And there are a few, so it would be fun to see people at some of my signings. Yeah, and find me on social media. I'm basically everywhere, and all the links are on the bottom of my website. So I'm often on Threads and Blue Sky and Instagram, and but I'm all over the place. So yeah, come connect. And I hope you guys love Doomflower. It's a scream.
It, it is. It is. Uh, don't let the thickness or the size of the book or the page number intimidate you. It's you'll be through it before you know it.
Thank
It
you.
it it moves you along very easily. So, well, Jintia, thank you so much again for coming.
Thank
We'd love
you.
to have you come back on when we talk
Yeah,
about your other works.
that would be
Uh,
great. Atacama's coming just a month after. So
okay.
happy spring, you guys. Get two horror books for me. Boom, boom.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.